I'm making this as a warning. If you ever see one of those dusty old costume shops, the kind that looks like it hasn't been touched in 100 years, just keep walking. Last Halloween I was desperate and I rented a costume from a place just like that. It came with a little card. 3 rules. Rule 1, don't take it off until sunrise. Rule 2, don't let blood touch its threads. Rule 3, don't look at your own reflection while you're wearing it. By the end of the night, I'd broken every single one. And the costume, well, it's not a costume anymore. It all started with procrastination, which is how most of my bad decisions get started. I'm a college student, and my life is basically a constant state of being 2 weeks behind on everything. So naturally, it was 5 p.m. on October 31st, and I had nothing to wear to the biggest party of the year. Every costume store for miles was a wreck, just picked over plastic and sad, empty packages. I was about to give up and draw whiskers on my face with a Sharpie when my roommate, bless his phone-addicted heart, said something. "What about that weird old costume shop on Mill Street?" he mumbled, not even looking up. "The one that always looks closed? Swear I saw a light on yesterday." Desperation won. An hour later, I'm standing in front of this place, and it honestly looked like it had been forgotten by time. The sign was faded gold leaf and just said, "Curios and Costumery." The windows were so caked with grime you couldn't see a thing inside. It smelled like rain and old paper, even though the night was totally clear. I pushed open the heavy oak door and a tiny bell announced I was there with this dull, dead clank. The air inside was thick, heavy. It smelled of mothballs, dust, and something else. Something kind of metallic and sweet, like old pennies. The shop was a maze of shelves packed with masks, hats, and clothes from what looked like every era in history. It was dead silent. I called out, "Hello," and my voice just felt swallowed by all the fabric. Then from behind a rack of actual Victorian mourning dresses, a figure emerged. He was this impossibly skinny old man, with skin like parchment stretched way too tight over his skull. But his eyes were the worst part. They were a cloudy, pale blue, and I swear they didn't blink. Not once. "Looking for something," he said. It wasn't a question. His voice was a dry rustle, like dead leaves. "A Halloween costume," I stammered out. "Something, last minute." He didn't smile. He just stared at me for a second, then gave this slow, deliberate nod. He led me through the maze to a back corner I hadn't even seen. And there, hanging all by itself, was a single costume. It was a scarecrow, but not one of the cheesy, smiling ones from a party store. This thing was authentic. The shirt was faded, patched up flannel. The pants were rough, like a burlap sack. The mask was made of coarse, stained burlap with crooked buttons for eyes and a jagged, stitched-up mouth. The straw poking out of the cuffs and collar looked real, dry and brittle. It was perfect. It was terrifying. "I'll take it," I said, probably a little too fast. He named a price that was surprisingly cheap. As he was putting it in a plain brown box, he slid a small, yellowed piece of birdstock inside. "The rules of rental," he rasped, his cloudy eyes locked on mine. "You'd be wise to follow them." I kind of laughed, thinking it was just a spooky gimmick. I grabbed the box, mumbled a thanks, and hurried out of there, just wanting to get to the party. I didn't look back. If I had, I might have seen that the light in the window was already off, the shop dark again, as if it had never been open at all. So before I tell you how the night went from fun to genuinely terrifying, and how I broke that first, simple rule, do me a favor. If you like stories that make you question things and maybe check over your shoulder, think about subscribing. It lets me know you want more stories from the shadows. Okay, now let's get back to the party. The party was raging by the time I showed up. The costume was a massive hit. Everyone loved it. People kept coming up to me, touching the rough mask, telling me how genuinely creepy it was. For the first couple of hours, I was having an amazing time. But then, this subtle wrongness started to creep in. The burlap mask was getting hot, like suffocatingly hot. The air I was breathing tasted like dust and dry rot. And the flannel shirt, which felt fine at first, was now unbelievably itchy. Not just a normal itch either. It was a deep, digging, scratching feeling, like every thread was a tiny needle against my skin. The sackcloth pants felt stiff and were rubbing my legs raw. I started to feel claustrophobic, like I was trapped inside this thing. By 3 a.m. the party was dying down, but my discomfort was at an all-time high. That first rule echoed in my head. Don't take it off until sunrise. Dawn was hours away. I looked at the few people left, all caught up in their own conversations. It's a dumb rule, I told myself. It's part of the act. What's the worst that could happen? I found an empty bedroom upstairs, shut the door, and started trying to peel the costume off. The mask was the worst. As I pulled it over my head, I felt this sharp, stinging sensation, like ripping off a ton of Band-Aids all at once. My face felt raw. I finally got it off and threw it on the bed, taking a huge, shuddering breath of fresh air. I looked down at my arms. They were covered in these angry red welts, not just from me scratching, but in these bizarre, swirling patterns that almost looked like wood grain. My face was burning. I splashed some water on it from the bathroom, trying to cool it down, telling myself it was just a really bad allergic reaction to old, dusty fabric. It had to be. After about 20 minutes, I knew I had to go home. I stared at the costume lying in a heap on the bed. The thought of putting it back on filled me with this real, actual dread. But I couldn't exactly walk home in my underwear. So with a sigh, I pulled the itchy shirt back on, then the abrasive pants. And as I slid my arms into the sleeves, I swear the costume felt tighter, more form-fitting, like it had shrunk in the few minutes it was off. I grabbed the burlap mask, held my breath, and pulled it back on. This time, it didn't just feel like a mask. It felt like a face. The walk back to my dorm was quiet and deeply unnerving. The campus was deserted, lit by the cold glow of security lights. The tightness of the costume was getting worse. The burlap of the mask felt like it was sticking to my cheeks and my forehead. Every rustle of the straw stuffing sounded like whispers right behind my ear. I told myself it was just my imagination, my brain playing tricks on me after a long night. I was cutting through a poorly lit path between the science building and the library when it happened. My foot caught on a loose paving stone, and I went down. Hard. I threw my hands out to catch myself, and my right palm scraped across the rough concrete. I sat up, hissing. There was a wide, ragged gash across my palm, already welling up with dark blood in the dim light. My first instinct was just to stop the bleeding. Without even thinking, I pressed my wounded hand flat against the thigh of the sackcloth pants, clamping down hard, and then I froze. Don't let blood touch its threads. The second the blood soaked into that old fabric, something changed. It wasn't loud. It was this quiet, sickening shift. A deep, unnatural cold. Bred from where my hand was, seeping through the pants and into my leg. It was a cold that felt like it was sinking right into my bones. The edges of my vision started to go gray and dim, and I heard it again, the whispering. But it wasn't the straw this time. It was a clear, hissing sound, like dozens of voices speaking at once from far away. The sound of wind blowing through a field of dead corn. I scrambled to my feet, my heart pounding. The costume didn't feel like clothes anymore. It felt alive. The fabric was clinging to me, moving with this subtle, rippling motion against my skin. The cold in my leg was spreading, a creeping numbness working its way up my body. I didn't walk home. I ran. I ran with a terror I have never felt before, the sound of those dry, whispering voices chasing me the entire way. I slammed my dorm room door and fumbled with the lock, my hands shaking so bad I could barely turn the key. I was hyperventilating, the dusty air of the mask choking me. I had to get it off, right now. I tore at the collar, but the buttons wouldn't move. They felt like they were sewn shut. I clawed at the mask, trying to get my fingers under the edge, but the burlap felt like it was fused to my skin. It wasn't just tight anymore. It felt like it had become part of me. A wave of pure, undiluted panic crashed over me. My eyes shot around my room, looking for anything, and they landed on the full-length mirror on my closet door. Don't look at your own reflection while wearing it. The final rule. My panicked brain just latched on to it. Maybe it was a bluff. Reverse psychology, right? Maybe looking in the mirror was the one thing that would break the curse. Or maybe it was the last mistake I'd ever make. I was literally trapped. I was out of options. Every single instinct screamed at me not to do it, but I was just too desperate. Taking a ragged breath, I turned and faced the mirror. For a split second, I saw me, a terrified kid in a creepy costume. But then, it changed. The reflection blinked, even though my own eyes were wide open in terror. The button eyes on the reflection's mask seemed to get darker, turning into these deep, empty pits, and the stitched grin on my reflection started to widen, the threads snapping one by one as it pulled itself into a horrifying, lipless smile. I was standing completely still, frozen, but my reflection wasn't. It slowly raised one of its straw-stuffed hands, the one that wasn't supposed to be injured, and it gave a little wave. A scream was building in my throat, but I couldn't make a sound. The thing in the mirror tilted its head, its movements fluid, almost predatory. Then, it did the impossible. It took a step forward. I watched in pure horror as my reflection pressed against the mirror's surface, the glass rippling like water around it. As it stepped forward in its world, my body was violently yanked forward in mine, my feet scraping the floor as I was dragged toward the closet door. The costume wasn't a second skin anymore. I was the costume, and the thing in the mirror was wearing me. I finally found my voice, but what came out wasn't a human scream. It was a dry, rasping hiss, the sound of air being forced through brittle straw. I flailed, clawing at the mask, my real fingernails digging into the burlap, trying to tear it off. It felt exactly like trying to peel off my own face. The thing in the mirror, my reflection, was laughing. I couldn't hear it, but I could see its shoulders shaking. It was enjoying this, feeding on my terror. My body, totally out of my control, kept lurching toward the mirror. With every last bit of will I had, I threw my weight backward. It was like fighting an invisible tide, but it was just enough. I lost my balance and crashed backward, the back of my head cracking hard against the edge of my desk. The world flashed white, then went black. When I came to, it was in pieces. The first thing I noticed was the silence. The whispering was gone. The second was that I could breathe. The air was cool and clean. I was on the floor, my head throbbing, and the costume, it felt loose. A new jolt of adrenaline hit me. I scrambled, kicking and tearing at the clothes. This time they came right off. The flannel shirt, the sackcloth pants, the burlap mask, they just fell away, slumping into a lifeless pile on the floor. Just a costume, just old, dusty clothes. I crawled away from it, pressing myself against the far wall. My skin was raw and red, covered in these thin, crisscrossing scratches that looked way too much like stitches. My head was bleeding, but the gash on my palm, the one that started all this, was gone. Not even a scar. I looked at the costume. The dark, wet stain of my blood was still there on the pant leg, a stark reminder that all of it was real. I didn't sleep. I just sat there, shaking, until the first bit of sun came through my window. Soon as it was light out, I gathered up the costume, stuffed it into 3 trash bags, one inside the other, and hauled it to a dumpster on the far side of campus. I never went back to Mill Street. About a month later, my curiosity got the better of me, and I went to look for the shop. The storefront wasn't there. In its place was a solid brick wall covered in old flyers, looking like it had been that way for 50 years. It's been a while now. The scratches have faded, though on cold nights, I swear I can still feel them. A phantom itch of burlap and stitches on my skin. I try to rationalize it. I try to tell myself it was all a hallucination, just a nightmare brought on by stress and a bad allergic reaction. But I can't, because every now and then, when I'm washing my hands or brushing my teeth, I'll catch my own reflection out of the corner of my eye, and for just a fraction of a second, I see it. A flicker of movement that wasn't mine. A shadow in my eyes that doesn't belong there. A smile that's just a little too wide. I don't really look in mirrors anymore. I just can't shake the terrifying feeling that one day I'll look, and the thing that broke all the rules will be looking back, ready to wave hello. Thanks for making it to the end. If you have a story of your own, something that doesn't quite add up, leave it in the comments. I'd like to read them. And if you want to fall down another rabbit hole, there's another video waiting for you on the screen. Watch it, if you dare. Stay safe out there.